Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next session of our tech session. For Q&A, kindly key in your questions at the Q&A chat box. Do visit our virtual exhibition and discover the latest water innovations and technologies. The exhibition will be live for 24 hours during this whole week. Do enjoy the next presentation.
Hello, good morning, selamat pagi, salam sejahtera. Welcome to this morning's presentation on in our tech section. My name is Ilyas Saidin. I'm a council member with the Malaysian Water Association, and this morning I'm moderating this session. For our next speaker, tech session, the topic on greening our grey cities with nature-based solutions. Now, this session will be presented by Mr. Robert Breas, our future water. Robert Breas is the editor-in-chief of the Palgrave Handbook of Climate Resilient Societies and the Palgrave Encyclopedia of Urban and Regional Futures, both major reference works published with the Springer Nature. He is also author of 9 books, including Urban Water Security, Blue and Green Cities, The Green Economy, and the Water Energy Food Nexus, Climate Resilient Water Resources Management, and Developing the Circular Water Economy. He is the founder of Our Future Water, which has a knowledge partnership with the World Bank's Connect for Climate program to take on climate change, and the UNEP, World Bank, OECD hosted Green Growth Knowledge Platform. Wow, a lot of tongue twisting there. Many organizations, very important and big organizations. Mr. Robert Breas will be speaking about greening our grey cities with nature-based solutions. Welcome, Mr. Robert Breas. Please take note that this presentation is pre-recorded, so any Q&A you may email to the organizers through water@protemgroup.com or to our Malaysian Water Association. You can email. There'll be no direct answers because this is a pre-recorded session. Thank you. Let's see the presentation.
So good afternoon and good morning wherever you are. Today I'll be speaking about greening our grey cities with nature-based solutions. So first of all, I'd like to speak about what we term grey infrastructure. Traditionally, all our cities rely on grey infrastructure to move stormwater as fast as possible from houses, buildings, streets, roads, etc. Into the nearest waterway possible to stop localized flooding. And traditionally, these stormwater systems are combined with wastewater sewer systems. These are known as combined systems. All this water usually, traditionally, is then led to a wastewater treatment plant. And then there's treated before discharged into the natural environment. And sometimes this excess water during storms is let out into streams and local waterways, etc. So that's a typical way that most cities around the world operate. And then when you get into new developments, these systems may be separated. You might have a stormwater system separate from the sewer system, but in most cities around the world, these are combined together. And that leads into some major issues. So these combined systems, while they're highly successful, impact water quantity and water quality at the same time. They can be easily overwhelmed during heavy rainfall events, and they increase downstream flooding risks. They also transport excess stormwater into waterways. This exposes people and aquatic life to toxins, chemicals, rubbish, pollutants, everything you can think of, car oil spills, etc., brake fluid, everything you can think of. And that impacts the aquatic life, as well as it poses a health risk to humans. And they completely fail when the heavy rainstorms come and swamp the cities with huge amounts of rain. And you can see a picture here, beautiful, amazing sewer water coming out of the ground. And what these are commonly called, especially in Europe, is called cloud bursts. And these happen in most cities with climate change. Our rainfall is becoming more frequent, more severe, and our traditional grey infrastructure can no longer handle this situation. So you can see this, what they call Copenhagen, the infamous cloud bursts of 2011. The streets are completely flooded out and nothing's working in the city. And Copenhagen was one of the cities that realized with climate change, this is becoming more normal, this is becoming more frequent, so they must do something about it. So today I'm talking about nature-based solutions. And nature-based solutions in this context come in various terms. So in my term, the one that's commonly used is blue-green infrastructure. So cities are turning to nature-based solutions to manage water quantity and improve water quality at the same time. And these solutions are commonly termed blue-green infrastructure. Blue-green infrastructure in the UK, it's green infrastructure in North America, it's called water-sensitive urban design in Australia. And I'll be just sticking to blue-green infrastructure today, but they all do the same thing. Basically, these are semi-natural systems or natural systems that are managed in such a way that restores the natural landscape while improving water quality and managing excess water. And blue-green infrastructure come in various shapes and sizes. No size fits all in one city. It could be completely different in another city. They range from rain gardens to green walls, green streets, and urban forests. And combined, they can manage our excess water, they can cleanse the water at the same time, and it's all for free because nature is doing it for you. So a key aspect of blue-green infrastructure is what's called multifunctionality, which means that one blue-green infrastructure site can provide multiple benefits and serve multiple functions all in the same spatial area. For instance, a green wall can reduce stormwater runoff, as well as improve water quality, but also reduce the urban heat island effect, and also insulate the building and provide a habitat for species. For instance, during the warmer months, the green wall can reduce the cooling costs for air conditioning, and during the cooler months, it can reduce heating for keeping you warm inside because the plants are keeping you warm naturally. And they also provide multiple co-benefits. Because of its multifunctionality, one little blue-green infrastructure can provide all these multiple benefits. For instance, it can provide enhanced biodiversity in cities. It can protect your buildings and infrastructure from climate change. It can provide green jobs with people getting training and education and then careers in this area. It can reduce infrastructure costs because grey infrastructure has a higher cost than green infrastructure or blue-green infrastructure. It also provides space for recreational and social activities. And you can see here, BGI comes in so many different shapes and forms. You can see green roof, you can see the stormwater tree planters, you can see rain gardens on the side of roads. So they come in all different shapes and sizes, and as I said, no one size fits all. So however way your city is built, you can design it around that city and what the people need. But today I'm talking about how can cities actually facilitate the uptake of blue-green infrastructure. And one of the key things of doing so is fiscal tools. So these are financial tools and instruments that cities can use to encourage the uptake of blue-green infrastructure. So as I mentioned, fiscal tools come in many different ways. They come in stormwater fees, they come as grants, they come as subsidies, and they encourage the uptake of blue-green infrastructure on private properties as well as public spaces, also new developments and retrofits as well. And they're easy to implement because you can tailor the fiscal instrument to the type of community you're trying to serve or the city itself. And they also provide an opportunity for a city to pilot small things and then see if it takes off and see whether that BGI is actually could become a citywide thing. For instance, you might provide a small council a grant to try out blue-green infrastructure in a specific neighborhood of a city. And if that works, then it can be implemented citywide. So just very, very briefly around the world, we have Berlin here. And what they've done is they've taken the rainwater fee, they've created a fee, and then they've actually increased that fee to encourage businesses to provide BGI on their private premises. The Euro 1.8 sounds very, very small, but when you have a business which has hundreds of square meters of property, these costs add up. This provides an incentive for the business to implement BGI on their private property to reduce their rainwater fee, which is paid annually. Of course, if you have any questions, you need these slides, I'm happy to send them. So if you don't manage to read all of it, that's fine, I can email them to you. And also BGI provides the ability for the company to have a partial or full waiver of a whole fee. And we're looking at City of Raleigh in North Carolina. What they've created is a rainwater rewards program. This is a reimbursement. So basically a business or organization will implement BGI and they'll be reimbursed up to 90% of those costs for the project itself. And they have all types of projects that are eligible for this: permeable pavements, constructed wetlands, green roofs, etc. And some cities believe in reimbursement. That means that the person has to put the money down first and then actually make the project happen, and then the city will reimburse for the amount. That takes the risk away of rather having a grant which could lead to a project that fails in the future. But then New York does it that way. They provide the grant, but then how they get around that potential failure is they offer workshops to people to explain how the project, how it can be done, what are the eligibility requirements, and they guide the people through the application. New York has a huge amount of green infrastructure across streets and rainwater gardens. And what they're doing at the moment is they're focusing more on green infrastructure on private properties in context of green roofs. So they basically provide a grant based on how big your green roof will be and how deep it is, which means how much water will it retain during storm events. And then we have a huge range of non-fiscal tools to encourage BGI on private and public property. So basically, cities can use a whole different types of non-fiscal tools to encourage BGI on public and private land, including developments and retrofits. And the common types of tools include information and awareness campaigns. They can even be fast tracking of BGI project applications, which means the city will itself sit down with you, and as long as you've ticked all the boxes, you've done what you have to do, you've sent in the forms, they can fast track that. And that encourages new developments and retrofits to get BGI installed quicker than having to go for a slow regulatory process and meandering through bureaucracy, especially when BGI can involve many different departments of the city. For instance, it could involve transportation, it could involve the city development authorities. And fast tracking means that all government agencies will work together to help the private property owner or public property owner fast track an application. They can also be seen as pilot and demonstration projects. And this means that basically cities will develop a demonstration project to show to the neighborhood or show to the city how effective BGI can be. And that encourages the private sector to then implement BGI. These tools are considered to be quite less intrusive and they create less resistance from stakeholder groups naturally because there's no fees attached to it or charges. And again, they allow cities to test programs and that may one day become mandatory. For instance, you might encourage the uptake of green roofs for a grant program and then say, okay, in 2 years' time, we're going to make this green roofs a mandatory requirement for new developments or retrofits. And it gives time for people to get used to it, installing it and seeing how a project runs. But it gives people a leeway of a few years, for example. And this type of, what San Francisco has done is with their BGI projects, they are always tested against a triple bottom line analysis. So the BGI has to fulfill multiple community, environmental, economic benefits. And one of the especially community benefits is that BGI provides an opportunity for stakeholder engagement, but also training and education and awareness raising. So to really get the community involved in their BGI, they've created what's called the Rain Guardians program. And that helps, that fosters this community spirit where businesses or individuals will look after their rain gardens in their neighborhoods. And that also helps maintain them, and maintenance costs are very, can be quite high. in cities. So it's a way of reducing the costs for maintaining BGI, because BGI can also become very ineffective if it's left to its own devices. For instance, trash and rubbish and all types of things happen. So the community is actively maintaining it. And what I find very interesting is what Melbourne is doing, is that getting people involved and up close with BGI. So, you know, getting people to actually experience it, because, you know, maybe you live in a building, you don't have much connection with nature. So what they've done is they've created a movable green wall, and that can be taken across cities and to show people what it's actually like. You can actually touch it, and they take it to different neighborhoods. And this green wall in particular is made of grassland species, and they take it to different parts of the city to expose people to see how it works, the multiple benefits provide. And also they have city representatives on hand to, you know, to answer questions for people. How does it work? What environment is it suitable for my house or your building, etc. So that's like a demonstration of showing people what it's really, really like. Sometimes demonstrations come in other forms. For instance, city may say, okay, for our city council buildings, we will have green roofs, or we'll have rain gardens, or we'll create some type of BGI feature. And that means that people can actually see not only a demonstration of how it works, but also leading by practice, leading by example, which is another non-fiscal tool that cities and city councils can use to really encourage people to think about BGI. And one of the interesting things that we keep hearing often is how to integrate, you know, green infrastructure with grey infrastructure. And Singapore has a very active BGI program. It's called Active, Beautiful, Clean Waters program. And they have, with the green buildings certificates, etc., they have, you know, points given for BGI and private property. But what they're doing is also leading by example as well. So they're actively finding ways to incorporate BGI into existing grey infrastructure to manage not only extreme weather events, but also bring people closer to water. So one particular project which has been highlighted as very successful is that undertaking an improvement project of a flood diversion canal. These canals are designed to prevent localised flooding. They're just concrete structures, very boring, flowing through the city. What they've done here is they've taken 800-metre long stretch of it, and they've installed BGI features. And they've put rain gardens, they've put new shelters, benches, fitness equipment, paths for jogging and cycling. They've created a wetland, and that's designed to you know, bring people closer to the water, experience nature, restore the natural habitat, but also prevent that localised flooding. So overall, in a flying around the world visit, in a very short space of time, we can see that BGI allows cities to manage stormwater or improving water quality. And basically, one thing is that BGI cannot be done on its own. It has to become a network of things, and that network that creates that really accentuates that multifunctionality. So multiple green roofs with multiple rain gardens, etc., will then, the sum is greater than the parts. So basically it will create huge economic, environmental and social benefits across the city and for its residents and people. And when it comes to fiscal tools, we can see there's a huge range of fiscal tools available, whether it's stormwater fees and rebates and grants to scale up BGI and private property. Now, we know that, you know, with COVID, etc., that the city governments and their budgets are very stretched at the moment. But then what you can do is be very innovative in how you use your fiscal tools by providing grants to communities, to non-profits, to scale up BGI in the neighbourhoods, or create new BGI on new developments in schools, etc., to not only manage the stormwater, but also bring people back to nature, restore our cities to the natural environments. And also, when it comes to non-fiscal tools, there's basically, you're looking at ways of engaging people, engaging stakeholders, and also getting them involved in BGI, because as I said before, having people maintain the BGI means they become effective. And by being effective, it means less complaints, and less complaints means more happy neighbourhoods and more people wanting that BGI because they can actually see it working. the last thing you want to do is create a whole lot of BGI in a neighborhood, have no one maintain it, it fails, people then complain about it because they look horrible, there's rubbish and trash in them, and then they don't work, and then someone thinks, well, this is silly, and just concretes it over. So that is one of the problems. So by thinking about how to engage communities, whether it's by adopting these things or creating rain guardian programs, they're highly important. And also demonstrating the application of BGI. It's highly important that cities and city councils lead by example as well, rather than mandating regulations on you must do this or you must do this. If you actually lead by example, what you can do is then create this nice framework. You can create the grounding for future mandatory regulations, getting people used to this concept, because this is not a mainstream concept yet. The traditional way of thinking is just straight to grey infrastructure. So that there's a lot of resistance that needs to be overcome, a lot of barriers. And also another way of resistance is overcoming this barrier of perceiving it to be either grey or green. Whereas what Singapore has done is integrated BGI into the traditional grey infrastructure, as well as having separate grey infrastructure itself. So in that sense, I like to conclude exactly almost 20 minutes. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Very fly through the world projects sharing, Robert. Thank you very much. Quite interesting for me to look at how we look at the world with colors. Colors all started with grey, and of course environment seems to take the blue and green. The marketing guys will take yellow and red, McDonald's kind of color, very attractive, they say. And black are usually reserved for demonstrations, those who are not in the disagreement group. But anyway, with the blue and green infrastructure movement, I would say, yes, consciousness would lead towards adopting this. I like the rebates that's being offered in many places in the world. Malaysia I know, give some rebates, but not as much as the other countries are doing. We do some small or rather some bigger local authorities do actually encourage and do practice blue-green infrastructure, quite ad hoc and perhaps a long-term program. I think a lot of it depends on the social and community consciousness in adopting blue-green infrastructure, especially more when it's naturally processed through nature instead of hard solutions. So with that, Mr. Bress was presenting in a pre-recorded way. There's no live Q&A. Any questions you may write an email to water@protemgroup.com or to MWA. Then I guess Robert will be able to answer you directly. I think with that, we thank Mr. Robert for his nice and educational presentation and wait for the next presentation. Thank you.